election, it was the Muslim vote that got him in. Without that, he would have been defeated. And so they tend to vote as a bloc, and they are encouraged to do that by their imams and their mosques. Remember, the mosques are the centers for the propagation of Islam, and we'll see more of that too. So then the second the first one was the Islamic Republic of Iran, the military threat. The second one is Islamic immigration and reproduction. That's the demographic jihad. Okay? The third existential threat, which very few people are talking about, this is the stealth jihad, the silent jihad, led by the Muslim Brotherhood and by the many front organizations of the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. For example, everybody has heard probably of the Muslim Student Association. They have branches on about 700 college and university campuses around the United States. They are the first Muslim Brotherhood front organization to be established in the United States. And their purpose is twofold. First, to organize the Muslim students at the university and to activate them. Many of them come there and they just simply happen to identify with Islam, but they don't know much about it. They're not activist Muslims. The purpose of the Muslim Student Association is to activate them. The second goal that they have on the campuses is to determine the discussion of Islam and Israel. And they do that. They're very active, they're very vociferous, and they will put all kinds of pressure on the university never to hire anybody who tells the truth about Islam. And that is what is going on. In campus demonstrations, they will always be out there promoting Islam and promoting the destruction of Israel. That is their purpose. So there are many front groups. The Council on American Islamic Relations is perhaps the most well-known one. They are a derivative of Hamas, which is, of course, on our terrorist organization list, and Hamas is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. And so what we have then is this massive campaign led by the Muslim Brotherhood to infiltrate all of our institutions. We'll be talking a little bit more of that in a moment. Now, what I want to do is start on our handout here. If you look at the top, it says the two conceptual errors, fundamental conceptual errors, which prevent most people from understanding the nature of Islam. We have to get the concepts clear, otherwise it's impossible. The first misunderstanding is that Islam means Muslims. Please, don't think that. Islam is the belief system. Muslims are the people who may or may not follow the belief system. Just like there are lots of Christians and lots of Jews who identify themselves as Christians and Jews but don't actually follow the Gospels or the Torah. Same principle in Islam. There are lots of Muslims who identify themselves as Muslim but who do not follow Islamic doctrine. If you turn, for example, to page 3, you'll see a model of the Muslim community. At the very top, you've got the violent jihadists. You all know about that. They're the sensational ones because, well, they always invent ingenious new ways of torturing people to death, and that gets into the news. So people see that. But what they don't see is the rest of this triangle. They think that the rest of the triangle consists of Muslims who are peaceful, but that's not true at all. At the bottom of the triangle, you'll notice you've got Muslims who don't share these political goals of Islam. But they won't really stand up and say anything about it, but they can't, as you'll see, because the sacred texts of Islam don't support them. They're violating the sacred texts of Islam. But look at that section in the middle. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of Muslims share the same goals as Al-Qaeda and ISIS. That is, that Islam should take over the world. They believe that, and they share those goals. But they're going about it in a different way. They're not sensationalists, they're not blowing people up, they're not killing them, they're not inventing these ingenious ways of torturing them to death, and so they don't attract attention. But these are the ones who follow the Islamic doctrines and who support Islamic supremacy. They do it through the stealth jihad, which we'll be talking about more in a moment, but I just want to show you here that there's a whole large section of the Muslim community that is supremacist. and they're supremacists because they are following Islamic doctrines. All right, so we'll go back to page 1. The first error then is to consider that Muslims are about the same as Islam. It's not. When we talk about Islam, we are talking about the Quran and Muhammad. I assume you all know that the Quran is the basis of the Islamic belief system. If you haven't read it, I urge you to do it. That will, by the way, also increase your authority as activists. When you talk to other people about Islam, and you're able to quote from the Quran, and you can tell them, I read this myself in the Quran, that increases your authority in convincing them. It's very important to do that. So take the time. It may cost you a couple of hours a day, or read only 3 or 4 pages a day, not even a couple of hours. And in the course of a month or 2, you'll have it finished. And use your marker to underline those passages that you want to tell other people about. Very important. So then there's no equality between Islam and Muslims. The faith is not the same as the faith community. Because you'll always hear these responses, if you quote something from the Quran, they'll say, oh, well, I know all of these Muslims who are not like that. But that is not a logical argument. Because of course there are lots of Muslims who are not like that. But Islam does not change merely because lots of Muslims don't follow it the way they're supposed to. Keep that in mind. Islam is what is being propagated in all of the mosques in the world, even if not all Muslims follow it. But it's Islam that is the problem. And that is the problem with people like General Mattis and General McMaster and Sebastian Gorka, who think that Islam itself is not the problem. And so they speak in various ways. They talk about radical Islam. Anybody ever heard that term, radical Islam? The favorite expression of the Trump administration is radical Islamic terrorism. It's a big step forward because they use the word Islamic, which is somehow connected to Islam. But what's the difference between radical Islamic terrorism and non-radical Islamic terrorism? It doesn't make any sense. So by putting an adjective in front of this, in fact, you're shielding the real problem, which is Islam itself. Glenn Beck wrote a book about a year or so ago entitled, It Is About Islam. You can get it for $9. It's actually a pretty good book. I don't have much other respect for Glenn Beck, but this book is not a bad one at all. And the title alone is worth the $9. It is about Islam. And I just noticed on your table over here, you've got a book by Sean Hannity. And I just glanced at the index to see what he has to say about Islam. There is no index entry for Islam. There is an index entry for radical Islam. What in the world is radical Islam? If Islam is the Quran and the sayings of Muhammad, in other words, the belief system, there's no such thing as radical Islam, because the Quran does not come in radical or non-radical forms. It's all logical. Once you understand the logic of Islam, it makes all the difference. Everything becomes clear. So the first thing is that you separate the notion of the belief system from the people. And then if you look at the belief system as the Quran plus the sayings of Muhammad, which are considered sacred by all religious Muslims, you will see that the term radical Islam doesn't make any sense. Because Islam is the Quran, and there's no such thing as a radical or a non-radical Quran. In fact, the president of Turkey, Erdogan, a few years ago, complained that Westerners were looking to Turkey as representing a moderate Islam. And he said that this is very ugly, this term, moderate Islam. He says there's no such thing as moderate or immoderate Islam. That Islam is Islam, and that's it. This is the major Islamic leader in the world. And he's right, because he's referring to the Quran and the sayings of Muhammad. That is Islam, and they don't come in radical or non-radical versions. Has anyone ever heard of Daniel Pipes? Okay. He's one of the leading, also one of the leading Islamophobes, but his favorite slogan is that radical Islam is the problem and moderate Islam is the solution. Well, you know from the logic already that there's no such thing as radical Islam or moderate Islam, because Islam is the Quran and they don't come in radical or moderate forms. And so here he is proposing this slogan that radical Islam is the problem, moderate Islam is the solution, And there is no such thing as either radical Islam or moderate Islam, and therefore what he says makes no sense. If he's talking about Muslims, that's different. There are radical Muslims, but there's no such thing as radical Islam. And there are moderate Muslims, they're the ones at the bottom of the triangle, but there's no such thing as moderate Islam. In other words, moderate Muslims are the ones who are not following the doctrines the way they're supposed to. The radical Muslims are the ones who are following the doctrines the way they're supposed to. But the doctrines don't change, and those doctrines are being taught and preached in every mosque. So when you see expressions like radical Islam or militant Islam or political Islam, everyone here ever heard of Dr. Jasser? Yes. A lot of people have. Well, he's the country's favorite moderate Muslim, and he's always speaking out against political Islam. But you know that it makes no logical sense, because you know that Islam is the Quran, and there is no such thing as a political or non-political Quran. The Quran is what it is. And so what he is saying is nonsense, and it's dangerous nonsense, because it awakens false hopes in people that there is, in fact, a moderate form of Islam, a non-political form of Islam, but that is impossible. It cannot be, because the Quran contains politics. And in the words of the Muslim religious authorities, and if we had time, I would read them to you, and I'll be happy to send you that material. Send me an email. I can send you the syllabus that I use in my 6-hour courses over in Sun City West, where we have all of these statements from the Islamic religious authorities supporting everything that I'm saying. So what I'm saying is not my opinion about Islam. I'm speaking about what the Islamic religious authorities tell you about Islam. If you want to find out the truth about Islam, which by the way is the most controversial topic in the world, where do you go? Well, a lot of people think, unfortunately, that if you want to find out about Islam, you go talk to a Muslim. Well, folks, that's the worst thing. You would no more talk to a Muslim about the truth about Islam than you would talk to an employee of Philip Morris about the truth about tobacco smoking. And for the same reason, they represent the organization. So if you don't go to a Muslim spokesman, ever, because they will not tell you the truth. So where do you go? Well, you go to the Islamic sacred texts themselves. You read it yourself. The Quran, the sayings of Muhammad. Or you go to the Muslim religious authorities, the ones who are respected by the worldwide Muslim community. They are not speaking to us. They are speaking to other Muslims, telling them how to observe Islam properly. So they are telling the truth about Islam, and that's where we go. Same way if you want to find out what the true doctrines of the Catholic Church are, you don't ask your Catholic neighbor, you go read the papal encyclicals, you go read the writings of the cardinals and then the Catholic Church fathers. That's how to find out what the Catholic Church says. Could you hold your question until later? Thank you. And so we always have to be careful, where do we go for the truth about Islam? And where we go is the Islamic religious authorities and the Islamic sacred texts. That leads us into error number 2, which so many people commit. They believe that Islam is just a religion like other religions. And that is because they don't understand what Islam is all about. And my purpose today is to show you what Islam is all about, so that you can then show other people what Islam is all about, using the words of the Islamic religious authorities. So first and foremost, Islamic religious authorities will tell you, and again, if we had the time, I would quote them in full here, they will tell you that Islam is a complete way of life. They also refer to it as a complete code of life, which means a law code, which means that it's mandatory. And they refer to it as a comprehensive ideology. So when I talk about the ideology of Islam, I'm not making that up. I just mentioned that, in fact, the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran speaks about Islam as an ideology. They're the Shiite branch of Islam, but the Sunnis are the same way, and I can give you lots of quotations from the Islamic religious authorities who refer to Islam as an ideology, as a comprehensive ideology, an ideology that covers all aspects of life. And they're not kidding. I have a manual of Sharia law at home, it's the most popular manual being used. And in it, there's a whole page in there on how men and women are supposed to urinate. Now, why in the world Is this part of their sacred law? Who cares? I don't think Jesus ever told anybody how they're supposed to urinate. And I don't think there's anything in the Torah about that. But here in Islam, the Islamic religious authorities are actually getting that far down into a person's personal life. When they say it covers all aspects of life, they're not kidding. That's just one example of it. Not that all Muslims follow it, obviously, but some of them do. And in fact, it has an effect. I understand that in England and perhaps elsewhere, part of the Sharia law about urinating and defecating is that you should not do it facing Mecca with either your front or your back, which means that the toilets have to be turned sideways, right? So you're not facing the holy places of Islam with either your front or your behind. And so what has happened is that in England, in the hospitals and in the prisons, they turn the toilets around to accommodate the Muslims because of Sharia law. And I have no doubt that it's probably being done in the United States too, under the influence of the Muslims. But just to give you an example that it covers everything. All right, so Islam is then a totalitarian ideology because it covers everything. That's what the word means. Totalitarian. They call it comprehensive. In fact, I have one statement from an Islamic religious authority, which in fact refers to Islam as totalitarian. But the other ones call it complete, or they call it comprehensive. It means the same thing. Another one, Islamic religious website says that the Quran covers totally the thoughts and behavior of religious Muslims. And they use the word totally. So that's what it is. It's a totalitarian ideology. In addition to totalitarian ideology, Islam is an imperialist ideology. If you turn to page 4, look on the left-hand column. Here's just a few passages from the Quran. Number 4. It says, make war on them, that is non-Muslims, until idolatry shall cease and God's religion shall reign supreme. Look at that.